Now I decree the topic of school is officially closed. I'm glad they were able to define what our relationship with school is, which is very different for most people. We have to talk about this summer first before we start plotting the rest of our lives. I've got some plans already. Like, I'm gonna visit my cousins. You chuckled, of course. What's something you want to do? The first thing that comes to your head. Hang out with Derek. I want to spend time with people. I've got some new art supplies. Reading. I'm going to catch up on movies and TV. I'll probably spend time at the beach. I don't want to do anything at all. It's vacation. I want to spend time with people. People, I hope that means me too. You lean back in your bed, settling in as you continue chatting with your friend. Even though it hadn't been that long since you saw her and you'd be seeing her soon, you found plenty to talk about. For one, the events of the day. You sat up straighter. I was with Cove and Derek today, and we met a new kid. Like, at your neighborhood? Mm-hmm. His parents are visiting family, so it sounds like he'll be around for a little while. I don't know how long. What was he like? Creepy. Mean. Weird. Kind of interesting. Mean. He kept snapping when all we were trying to do was talk to him. He just kept being rude to everyone. But especially Cove. I don't think I want to meet him. You want a boy to stay away before even meeting him? That's an unexpected twist. Your cousin was pretty popular with the boys who knew her. She seemed happy enough to have them around until they started to annoy her. Who are you to talk? Cove and Derek are always around. They're both boys, you know. That's true. That's not the same. They're not always around. I'm not the one who invites them. They show up on their own. You weren't able to say anything. I'll say that's true. Lee laughed at your affirmation, deeply amused. After a moment, you chuckled along with her. There was a stomping noise approaching a room, heralding the arrival of your irritated older sister. She flung the door open, a frown etched on her face. How long are you going to hog the phone? Glancing at your watch, you realized that your quick call had gone on much longer than anticipated. Elizabeth held out her hand, the other one lodged on her hip. She noticed the realization on your face. Time's up. Well, I gotta go. I'll see you soon. I mean, I'm reasonable. With a sigh, you said your goodbyes to Lee. Sorry for being long. I'm still using it. No, gotta go. I'll see you soon, okay? I'll say sorry for being long. Lee, I have to go now. Okay, see you soon. Tell Elizabeth and your moms I said hi, too. You barely pressed the end call when Elizabeth whisked the handset from your fingers and began dialing someone new as she strode out of the room. Your ma's voice called from downstairs. Hey, has anyone seen the phone? I'm using it. With that, she shut your door behind you. Silence was left in the wake. That was one way to end your first day of summer break. Breakfast was eaten in peace and alone. Your moms were both out by the time you had gotten up. They had left you a serving of food from the breakfast they had made. Hash browns, an omelet, fruit salad, and there were a few sausage links. You took a little bit of everything. You passed on some parts because they weren't things you liked. I love food. I have a very healthy relationship when it comes to food. You passed some parts because you're trying to avoid meat. You passed some parts because you were trying to avoid animal products. You took a little bit of everything. It was tasty. You appreciated there was a variety in the meals your mom's made. The day lazily drifted by at home, and eventually your parents returned. You pulled open the fridge again, lingering in the frosty air for a moment or two before grabbing a bottle of ice-cold water and taking a long drink. It was a perfect, balmy summer afternoon, and you had decided to head outdoors and find something to do. You hadn't decided what that something was just yet, but you were sure something would pop up to occupy your time. You stepped out out the front door and onto the street, deciding which way to go first, when a voice caught your attention. Hi, Hark! Confused, you looked over to where an unrecognizable woman was waving at you, a friendly smile plastered on her face. You racked your memory for where you might have seen her before, but nothing came to mind. Not your school or from the country club your moms took you to. You had absolutely no idea who the woman was. The woman crossed the road towards you, and you were a little unsure whether you should stay put or go back into the house and lock the door. Oops, I'm sorry. Was that presumptuous? I've heard about you, but you have no idea who I am, do you? You shook your head, and she removed her sunglasses to reveal sparkly ocean blue eyes. All of a sudden, she seemed a little more familiar. My son lives here, and my ex too. With a bent smile, she lifted a hand to point at the condo across the street from your house. She was Cove's mom. You didn't know why you hadn't realized sooner, now that you'd gotten a good look at her. She seemed nice. She seemed sort of strange. She looked really young. It made sense that she was Cove's mom. She felt so different to Cove. She was super pretty. It made sense. I could crush on both of Cove's parents. It made sense that she was Cove's mom. They had the same eyes and other physical traits in common. She extended a hand again, this time for you to take, and you studied the manicured fingers in front of your face and the assortment of bracelets that dangled from her wrists. I'm Kyra Priest. You can call me Kyra. You shook her hand. You didn't shake her hand. I'm polite. You shook her hand. You reached out and shook her hand, and she took yours firmly, grinning wide. I'm Hark, but you already know that.
I do.
That I do. Cove's mentioned you to me before. It's nice to officially meet you, Hark. He did? Cove and I aren't really friends. I've also heard that. Maybe that will change one day. What has Cove said about me? What are you doing here? Nice to meet you too. You kept quiet. What has Cove said about me? This is what I'm most curious about because we're not really friends. Oh, I can't tell you that. I've already said too much. She laughed good-naturedly. You couldn't be happy about that answer, though. The sound of a door opening and closing caught both of your attentions, and when you turned towards the sound, it was to find Cove exiting his house, his eyes skimming the ground. Considering just how tall he had grown up, you kind of figured his mom also would have been tall, but she was much more on the short side for an adult anyway. Cove's height must have come from his father. There you are. I thought you were going to keep me standing out here all day. You said nothing as Cove walked over to the two of you. When he finally looked up, he noticed you were there and raised his eyebrows curiously. You couldn't quite tell if the expression that crossed his face was confusion or relief. Cove and I are heading into town to grab something to eat while the snore is at work. Kyra beamed at Cove and ruffled his hair, which only seemed to upset him more. You assumed the snore she was talking about was Mr. Holden. Hey, you should come with us, Hark. I'd love to get to know you better. Yeah, you should come. Really? Really? Cove would ask me to come? You were a little taken aback by Cove's agreement. You hadn't imagined being stuck with him and his suddenly appearing mom for that afternoon, especially not if he was going to be gloomy the whole time. Of course, we'll run it by your parents first, responsibility and all that. It'll give me an excuse to meet them, which I need to do at some point. It's important to be neighborly if I'm going to be roosting on the street for the time being. Anywhoosie, let's go. She didn't even ask me if I was going to say yes. Kyra walked ahead towards her house, and you hung back with Cove, who crinkled his nose as he watched her. I'm sorry about her, but I really do want you to come. Why? I don't want it to be just the two of us, not right now. Oh, so it's not because of me, personally, it's because of his mom. I didn't know your mom was coming over. Don't you usually go to where she is? Yeah, she's gonna be staying with us for the summer. She just got here this morning. It was a surprise they planned. His face scrunched up more. You nodded understanding. Cove had been through a lot with both his parents the past few years, and it seemed like it was still taking some time to adjust. The two of you headed over to where Cove's mom had just knocked on your front door and stood behind her. Mom answered the door after a minute, her eyebrows lifting in surprise at the group she found in front of her. You realized that, like you, she would have no idea that it was Cove's mom who was hanging with you. However, after blinking at the woman a couple times and looking between her and Cove, the realization seemed to strike on her. Hello there, I'm Pamela. I see you've met my kid, Hark, and I'm guessing you've already known Cove for a while. Kyra laughed, and you and Cove exchanged looks at your parents' weird sense of humor. I'm Kyra Priest, Cove's mom. It's so nice to meet you. A head of purple-brown hair caught your eye as Ma popped up behind Mom, squeezing herself in beside her. We have company. I was wondering what all the commotion was. She grinned excitedly at Kyra. The two of them introduced themselves and shook hands. Hi, Hark. Cove. Cove smiled at Ma shyly, and she gestured a hand towards the living room. There's no use hanging out in the doorway. Why don't you come in? I'd love to, but I promised to take my son out to eat, and I wouldn't want to hold you up with a surprise visit. Cove grimaced. He likely took offense at how she didn't want to put them out with a surprise visit, but not him apparently. Oh, I understand. You're welcome to stop by any time. I'll take you up on the offer when I can. Count on it. Would you mind too much if Hark went with Cove and I? My treat. We won't be driving. Just a quick walk down the road. She definitely did not ask me if I wanted to come. She definitely just is taking me against my will. I definitely feel like this could be kidnapping. This could definitely be considered kidnapping. Sure, that sounds nice. I hope you all have fun. Nobody cared to ask me if I wanted to go. You gave your moms a look, and they smiled at you fondly. You were happy they were letting you go. You were annoyed they agreed just like that. You were annoyed they agreed just like that. Even if you had shown up with them, you and Cove didn't hang out often. They at least could have done was... the least they could have done was check with you first. Letting out a sigh, you resigned yourself to the fact that you didn't have much of a choice. Marvelous. Let's check us back in an hour or two. We look forward to seeing you again. Take care. Your parents waved goodbye to the three of us as you walked up onto the street. There was a sound of the front door closing behind you. I'm pretty positive I saw some restaurants when I was in the taxi. Not too far from here. Yeah, it's a tourist town, isn't it? There are a lot of them around. It was kind of strange to see Cove give someone this much attitude. If he wasn't in the mood to be nice, he generally just kept to himself. Kyra put her hands on her hips and smiled at her son. Well, you sound like an area expert. Do you have any recommendations for a place nearby? Not really. Kyra pouted him a little and turned to you instead. What about you, Hark? Want to point me in the right direction? You shrugged. Not really. Sure, I have a couple of favorites. I mean, if I'm going to go to dinner with these well, not two strangers. If I'm going to go with Cove and his mom, might as well go to somewhere I have favorites. Sure, I have a couple favorites. You've been to a lot of places in town, and there were a couple that stood out from all the rest. There's a Chinese restaurant that me and my family go to all the time. It's my mom's favorite, even though their drink selection stinks. There's also a tropical themed place that tries to be sort of fancy. Oh yeah, the tropical themed place. Okay, never mind. The tropical themed place, that's the place where the drinks stink. Not the Chinese place. The Chinese place I remember actually was pretty good. Both sound like a treat. I'll leave it to you to pick for us since Cove is going through a phase over there. He huffed at her and turned his face away. The Chinese restaurant, the tropical themed place. You insisted Cove contribute the decision. You insisted Kyra decide. I'm gonna push Cove. You contribute the decision. You can go through whatever phase you want, but you still gotta say which restaurant you want to eat at, Cove. He mumbled sulkily, wanting this to be over. I like the tropical place more. Yeah, but you know what? Never mind. We went to the tropical place. We went to the tropical place last time. Let's go to the Chinese restaurant. Actually, never mind. You gave the wrong answer, Cove. I'm trying not to be so mean this Let's Play, but it's I just kind of find it like amusing. I'll go to the Chinese restaurant. Thank you, Kyra. Hark. Will you show us the way? You nodded, taking the lead of your little group as Cove and his mom followed behind you. Together, the three of you left the neighborhood behind. The walk was about 15 minutes, and along the way, Kyra asked a lot of questions about the area. Cove was quiet most of the time, so you ended up answering her instead. Kyra explained that she lived in a large city, and she loved how peaceful and relaxing everything seemed in Sunset Bird. The restaurant was busy as usual, but luckily we were shown right to a small table. Kyra lowered herself into the chair while Cove picked the one diagonal to her, not facing her or to her side. It was awkward. Let's see. To start, what would you all like to drink? I'll get an orange soda. Noted. Hark? Water, soda, milk, juice, coffee. I can't have green tea? If they had us come to the Chinese restaurant, they should have at least... Although green tea is Japanese, excuse me. Regular tea. I always got tea. Even in middle school, I got the tea. Just water, soda, milk, juice, coffee. I'll go for soda. It's middle school. I would have gotten a soda. Which flavor? Cola, orange, grape, lemon, lime, root beer, ginger ale. Definitely root beer. Sure. Kyra placed the order for your drinks, getting a black hot coffee for herself, and it didn't take long before they were brought to the table and set in front of you. You took a long sip of your drink as you looked around the restaurant. Your small group checked over the menus, and you decided to order a usual thing. You had been to this restaurant many times, so you knew what was good and what wasn't already. Kyra and Cove didn't need any encouragement for this. They were totally focused on the information in front of them. Soon the meals too were ordered and the menus taken away. You glanced at the table surface, waiting to figure out what to say. Cove awkwardly sunk back further into his seat and crossed his arms, all while blatantly avoiding eye contact. The side wall must be really interesting to him right now. His sour feelings today were unignorable. Instead of them asking more open questions, he'd brush off Kyra had mercy on her son and instead put her focus towards you. So, Hark, what's a few things that you're into? There's gotta be something you do for fun, especially now that you're not buried in school assignments. I like to read, I like to watch. Games are fun, I like to play, I like to hang out with people, go to the beach. Sports, music, art, things. Games are fun, I like to play video games. I don't know much about them. I don't know much about them. Maybe you can show me sometimes. And board games. That's great. We should play a game together sometime. And, I like to hang out with people. Hey, it's nice to have friends and family to spend time with. I like to read. Fiction, comic books, manga, magazines, poetry, non-fiction books, fiction novels. Me too. Nothing beats curling up with a good book. Comic books. Oh, just like Cove's daddy back in the day. And I like to watch TV. It's pretty addicting when you find a good series, isn't it? Movies. Kyra nodded her head, and you guess she must like that too. And people like that. Go to the beach. I'm not into sports, music, spend time on art. I like write things. Still spend time studying, fashion,
Thanks.
and you didn't say anything else. Thanks, I'm happy I learned more about you. There's so much I hadn't heard. Cove leaves the details out. I don't think Cove knows me well enough to know all the details, to leave out. He cringed, looking very much like he would rather be anywhere but here. Hoping it would clear some of the tension in the air, you decided to ask Kyra a few questions of your own. Cove hadn't told you much about her, and you were curious to know more about this woman who was such a big part of his life. What exactly do you do for work? I'm a travel writer for magazines and things. I keep people in the loop on what's worth seeing. It's good work. Wow. What do you like to do? Where do you live normally? Are you in a new relationship now? Why did you and Mr. Holden get divorced? I'm kind of... She was the one... So here's the thing. She was the one who, like, invited me in this trip in the first place. So... And against my will. So I think this is payback. This is she did not ask me if I wanted to come. She was just like, we're gonna go. So here's my payback. Why did you and Mr. Holden get divorced? Cove nudged you in the arm, and when you looked at him, he seemed furious. Kyra brushed the question off lightly. That's grown-up stuff. You should enjoy your youth while you can, without having to worry about all that. Cove sipped his soda angrily, slurping up the remaining drink with furrowed brows. He looked ready to run straight out of the restaurant. You wonder if he was annoyed that you were spending the time talking to his mom, but he hadn't seemed to want to talk to her at all. You left him alone. You flicked his straw wrapper at him. You gave him a sympathetic look. You smiled at him. You made a silly face at him. I'll leave him alone. You flicked his straw wrapper at him. You gave him a sympathetic look. I'm not gonna bully him. You smiled at him. You made a silly face. You left him alone. You quietly watched him until he finally noticed, and his ocean blue eyes met yours. It was subtle, but you swore you could see the hint of a smile tilting the corner of his lips. You two seem really cute together. I don't know why. We're very indifferent to each other. Or maybe he has a crush on me and I'm just not reciprocating. Cove covered his face with his hands and leaned back in his seat.
Seriously?
Mom, why would you say that? You felt bothered too. You blushed. Thanks, we are cute. You just laughed. You blushed. I felt bothered too. I'm like, you're fixing us up? Under what grounds? You and Cove weren't even friends, really. It seems strange for her to say something like that without knowing you. I know. What's going on with this lady? Everything about... It's interesting how my relationship with Cove makes my whole opinion and feelings towards Kyra go totally differently. Because with her right now, I just feel nothing but like sketched out. Really awkward and sketched out. Same thing with Cliff, other than the fact that apparently I think Cove's dad is hot. Other than that, which also is kind of awkward in its own sense. Your meals were delivered shortly after that, and everything was so delicious. Even Cove enjoyed his food. Alright, now that we're all full and content, can you explain, please, why you've had a bug up your butt all day? Cove's face instantly returned to its scrunched form. Seriously, baby, what did Mom do to make you this mad? I haven't even been around the full day yet. He gripped the edge of the table, refusing to make eye contact. The words he spoke were barely audible over the din of the restaurant. You could have told me. She leaned forward not to miss anything else, eyebrows raised. Told you what? He finally seemed to find his voice and spoke the thoughts that had been on his mind. That I wasn't gonna visit you this year, that you were gonna be coming instead. Didn't you invite me? You wanted me here with you. Cove's eyes began to shake and his frustration ebbed. I don't want you to be around, but I didn't know it'd be like this. I do want you to be around, but I didn't know it'd be like this. It's not the same and nobody said anything. I see. Her expression grew tense. She threaded her fingers together and placed her hands in front of her on the table. We've both been gifted another Clifford surprise. Referring to that as the Clifford surprise almost caused both you and Cove to crack a smile. You also had no idea his name wasn't just Cliff. Over 5 years, nobody ever called him Clifford until now. She smoothed her hair out, not letting go of her stern look. The more things change, the more they stay the same. They let out identical sighs, but smiled weakly at one another afterwards. I can go home, Cove. We can still set up a normal trip to my place before the summer ends. Cove's lips tightly closed together. He seriously pondered the option. I think I do want you to stay. I miss it when you're not here. My heart. She reached across the gap, grabbed his face, and planted a kiss on his cheek. Cove tried to wiggle away. Mom, stop. I'm sorry. Sweet young men need to be smooched by their parents. If I don't, they'll take away my mom license. Kyra was completely enthused by Cove's admission, though a tone of seriousness did return to her voice when the conversation continued. Do you want to talk to your dad too? No. Cove had snapped the word instantly, but reeled his annoyance back in just as quickly. Maybe later, not today. I understand. We can shelve it. Thanks, Mom. Thank you for talking to me, little mister. She grinned affectionately at him before turning her way. And thank you, Hark. Huh? What did I do? I just made it awkward. It's easy to act like a baby with your mom. It's hard to keep that up with your neighbor watching everything. Mom? She just ruffled his hair with a laugh, then moved her hand down to tap the end of his nose. And that was how the issue was resolved, at least between Cove and his mom. When the three of you left the restaurant and Kyra had paid the bill, you walked back to your neighborhood slowly. You'd eaten so much by that time you were beginning to feel sleepy. It didn't help that the lunch had happened late and the sun was already beginning to descend from the sky. But eventually reached your street. Someone was there to greet your group upon arrival. Welcome back, family, and Hark too. Cliff. Dad. The two walked past him to the condo without sparing another word. Despite the summer heat, their shoulders were cold. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. He rubbed the back of his neck with a crooked smile, but his eyes were soft as he looked on after them. He's so much like his mom, don't you think? You gave a vague nod, not sure what he was expecting you to do. He nodded back far more energetically. Okay, have a nice night, Hark. You too, Mr. Holden. With that, Cove's dad disappeared to join the others inside. It was your turn to go home now. Summer hadn't started off at all how you imagined it would have, though it turned out to set the tone well. Having Kyra in the neighborhood was a new experience for not only you and Cove, but also both your families, and a dull moment was rarely had. Interesting. So yeah, that set things up. I do feel bad, but I do feel like my curiosity was satiated with all that. So here are all the ones, or here's all the scenes for step 2. I probably will still do the scenes again that has Derek in them, but at least initially, here we go. Thanks for purchasing the Derek's DLC. Here you can play 5 new moments centered around Derek. He also has a special epilogue in step 4. To unlock it, you need to fulfill these conditions. Play all 5 of the Derek DLC moments, completing Soiree with Cove, or by going alone is alright, so long as you finish the moment. Choose to remain in touch with Derek during step 3. Then you will have the option to play Derek's epilogue during step 4. You can only have one epilogue per playthrough. You can make a save on the epilogue selection page to reload there and pick another later. Derek's DLC can be a friendship or a romance story, which I love. Responsible, Lemonade, Soiree, Siblings, or Boardwalk. So does that mean if I choose Soiree, I guess if I choose Soiree, it will lock me out of this one? Maybe? Maybe? Boardwalk. I'm gonna save Soiree for the end. It feels like that is something I need to end with. And then but I'll do the other ones. Boardwalk seems fun. Boardwalk, Lemonade, Siblings. Oh, I'm super excited with these moments. Oh, so pumped. So pumped to spend more time with Derek. Okay, so which one do we want to do first? Well, first of all, I definitely want to save the Soiree for last. I feel like that is the one that would be a great way to end this step, because the Soiree was a pretty big deal between my character and Cove, especially in terms of their relationship. And so I feel like something similar is probably going to happen with the Soiree version of Derek. Lemonade sounds cool. Responsible sounds... I don't know if I'm leaning towards Responsible. That one... I'm sure it is going to be interesting, but just right off, just on paper, I'm like, Responsible? I'm not sure if that's a scene I want to start with. Siblings will be interesting just to see like the dynamic between the different characters, but I really want to start off with a bang. The Boardwalk looks like a really cool... the fact that there's a Ferris wheel, it's got like that carnival feel. I think this would be a great way to like start with a bang. So let's start with Boardwalk, end with Soiree, and then we'll figure out all of these 3 in between. So let's do Boardwalk. It was early morning. But the day was already buzzing with excitement. Your whole family was gathered together with all 5 Suarezes in their cozy living room. Oh cool, we're already hanging out with the Suarezes. Today you were all making a trip out to a boardwalk set park. It was a regular enough outing for Derek's family, but it would be your first time going. The boardwalk was a few hours away and was even further when setting out from Sunset Bird. That's why the adults decided on the meetup here at the Suarez's apartment instead of gathering at the boardwalk itself. Oh, this is cool. We get to see, we get to visit Derek's house. I love this. It gave your moms a little break from driving, and everyone got their last chance to run for the bathroom. You would be leaving very soon. While you waited for the trip to officially start, you sat on the couch with your hands in your lap. For a few minutes now, you tried to keep track of what the group gathered around the kitchen counter were up to. Elizabeth, your moms, and Mrs. Suarez were all busily making preparations from what you could tell. Meanwhile, Mr. Suarez had his hands full, rounding up his 2 youngest kids. It seemed that they were taking an anti-shoe stance that morning, and in Nicholas's case, he needed to be talked into wearing a shirt too. On the cushion next to you, Derek was pumped for what the boardwalk had to offer. He was rambling a mile a minute about all the fun stuff he couldn't wait to show you. You were excited about it. You were nervous about how busy it might be. You were simply happy because Derek was happy. Oh! But I'm also excited about it. I'm excited about it because it also makes Derek happy. But bouncing your leg, you struggled to contain your energy. You were just as eager to experience everything he described. This journey was also the first time your and Derek's families were doing a big activity together. You couldn't believe it originally when the adults went through with organizing the trip.
Let's go.
Kids, come join us in the kitchen. It's time to pack your treat bags. Cool. Sliding off the couch, you didn't have the faintest idea what Mrs. Suarez meant, but you were summoned, and so you followed Derek's lead. He turned to say something over his shoulder. He'd guessed that line might have been confusing to a newcomer. The snack bags are what we do for larger trips. Me and my brothers, and you and Elizabeth too, we get to fill a little plastic baggie with any sweets and stuff we want. That's a great idea, actually. It's supposed to be for eating during the hours-long drive, but no one really cares when we snack. It's just so we have something if we need it. Lucky! That's the coolest idea! I'm gonna steal that. I think so too. It's great to have on hand. As you reach the kitchen, Elizabeth breezed past you with your moms following at a more relaxed pace. Derek raised a skeptical brow and pointed in her direction with his thumb. Doesn't she want a bag? Elizabeth stopped and spun around on her heel. Surprised, Derek pulled his hand back to his side. Elizabeth's lips curled into an all-too-pleased smirk. You heard Mrs. Suarez. She called for the kids to come. Alright. You don't want a snack bag, Elizabeth? That's fine by me. Ma shook her head at Elizabeth's taunting display. Your sister stepped forward and held up a zip bag that you hadn't noticed before. Here's the thing. I was never that kid that wanted to rush growing up. Or just felt like, I'm not a kid anymore. I don't think I ever was that. Did I recognize that there were things that I couldn't do as a kid that I could do later on in life and I was excited to do? Absolutely, yes. But I feel like I was one of those rare kids who recognized how short your childhood really is and how valuable it will be when I got older and how much I would miss being a kid. I seem to be very self-aware of that. And so I made it a point to just really relish and savor my childhood. I didn't want to grow up. I had that Peter Pan complex where I just wanted to be a kid forever. I mean, I still like goofing off and playing around, playing my video games. Not that the video game is now just a kid thing, although back in the day when I was growing up, it was unusual for adults. It was unusual for adults to play video games back in my day. But now, everyone from my generation who played video games, you know, during our childhood, we're still playing video games now. So that whole thing just totally shifted. But going back to like the childhood, I don't think I ever was like Elizabeth, or like, oh, that's the kids' table. I'm not a kid anymore. I was quite the opposite, where like, hey, if there's a kids' table, I want to hang out at the kids' table. But then it got to the point where all of the kids were like staring at me and were like, who is this creepy grown-up at this kid's table? So, Ma shook her head at Elizabeth, talking to the player. Sister stepped forward and held up his time zip bag. I hadn't noticed it before. I already got mine while we were getting things set up for the rest of you. Okay, sure, whatever, Elizabeth.